Okay. So a little bit about me. So my name's Erin Boas. I'm a sophomore majoring in international politics and economics with minors in entrepreneurship and business. I do want to thank everybody for being here and everybody for listening in. It's a really trying time for everybody. Everybody's dealing with things a lot differently, and there's different situations that are happening to everybody. But I am really proud of the way that the Penn State community has been able to band together and still be a community, even though we're not directly in front of each other. So a little bit about me is when I first came to Penn State, I knew off the bat that I wanted to be as involved as I possibly could be. And so like any other freshman or any other person in the fall, I went to the involvement fair. And when I was leaving the involvement fair, I was going to go back up to the hub, and I remember a voice calling out saying, "Do you want to help better student lives at Penn State?" And I stopped in my tracks and I turned and I listened to people from the University Park Undergraduate Association tell me what it's like to advocate for students at all different levels. And immediately I applied, and I haven't looked back, and I don't plan to. So I joined the freshman council my first year, and then halfway through the year, I was internally elected as an at-large representative. And then for the 14th Assembly, I was again reelected as an at-large representative. And throughout my time, I've sat on academic affairs, governmental affairs, and outreach committees. And I've learned a lot, not only about the organization and about UPUA, but just about the student body and the university as a whole. And so I've interacted with a lot of administration. And one of my biggest things that I'm passionate about is advocacy. I've seen advocacy from both levels and from both sides. So I've been the person to advocate for people, and I've also been somebody who's been advocated for. Sophomore year of my high school, I actually started a club called, it's a nonprofit organization called Making Everyone Greatly Aware. And we basically put on service events and organizations to raise money and awareness for different organizations. And it was advocacy of the community and just any fundraiser that we could come up with. And the first one actually really hit close to home because I have a brother who's chronically ill, and I got to lead a group of 30 to 40 people to put on a fundraiser for something that hit so close to home. And so I've seen the people advocate for things that they're passionate about, and I've advocated for things that I'm passionate about, and I've also been advocated for in the past. And so working with Kyle, he and I have really put together a platform that is centered around advocacy and centered around community and collaboration. We have 72 initiatives that are all linked to sustainability, but most importantly, they're about you. We want to make sure that from the minute that you wake up in the morning to the minute that you go to sleep, you have the best experience and you are set up completely to empower your future. Our slogan is empowering state's future, and the future of state really is the students. And so we want to make sure that you're always able to not only can we advocate with and for you, but you can advocate for yourself and with others. So I'm really excited to share a little bit more about myself and the platform.
Okay, thank you, Erin. Zach, if you want to go into your introduction.
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to. So thank you so much for hosting tonight's debate, and thank you to everyone who is catching up and watching it later on. I'd also like to thank Erin for being here tonight to have a pretty nice conversation as to the kind of change that we want to see brought about on campus. I am so looking forward to talking about the different highlights which our campaign has been focusing on, which has been primarily you. Throughout the entire last few weeks, we've been in a pretty difficult situation, but the one thing which has never changed is that we have been listening to you from day one. Our campaign plans might have been a little switched, but our virtual listening tour has always been comprised around the idea that the student concerns ought to be integrated into the platform of any executive ever. That's something I don't think many UPUA presidents who have run on their own platforms have done before, but it's something that I think the UPUA executive, as well as the organization as an entirety, should be striving to do on a day-to-day basis. We have taken your recommendations, your insights, and listed to create what we feel is truly, like I said, one of those best platforms, because ultimately they reflect the greatest concerns that the student body faces. We're tackling the issues that matter the most, issues of food insecurity and mental health, of sexual assault and feeling safe and secure in the place that you call home, of environmental responsibility and ensuring that we leave this campus and university better than we found it, what we have been trying to prove throughout this entire campaign is that we, as the student government, can and must do more for you. For years, candidates have used change and empowerment solely as political buzzwords during elections. And then when it comes time for those words to deliver, we frequently see the exact same status quo be brought about, and that change failed to deliver. I can assure you and everybody watching tonight that Lexi and I are candidates who will not shy away from those real responsibilities which the UPUA executive, in my opinion, ought to take up. But we are here to help amplify your voice and deliver on the problems that you want to see addressed the most. On that note, I am so excited to get started. And then just, I guess, a little bit about me. I'm a junior at Penn State right now, majoring in economics with minors in political science, theater, and military studies. I am fairly involved on campus. I currently am a member of the Penn State Lion Caucus, which I helped to found last year with a good friend of mine, Zach Robinson. I served as its vice president in that executive role, and then stepped down the next year to serve as the governmental affairs chair in UPUA, which I have had the honor of serving in this entire past year. That is the advocacy arm of UPUA, and as such, we have directly overseen advocacy on behalf of the student body to elected officials at all levels of government, as well as to the Board of Trustees, ensuring that students' voices are reflected in all of those conversations and that their greatest concerns are being addressed. I'm also a Navy midshipman in Penn State's NROTC because I think that's always been a priority of mine is service to others. But I think through my involvements, I think I've come to learn that this is ultimately the best way to serve on behalf of others and represent the greatest concerns which need to be addressed. And I so look forward to doing it.
Thank you. So due to the little issue with Erin's mic and the mix-up of the introduction, I just want to give Erin the opportunity to answer the question again, just because we may have missed part of it. So I'm just going to ask the first question again, and then Erin will answer it, and then Zach can answer it. So the first question is, in your own words, please describe the position of student body president and how you feel that you could successfully fulfill the obligations of this role.
Yeah, so I've seen two different presidents pass through the assembly, and I've heard information and about the past presidents too. And I think that one of the main things that the president typically does is they communicate to administration and to other students' needs. But it's not just about communication, and it's not about translating what the students want. It's about unedited, unabbreviated student needs and real, raw student stories. And so I think putting together, talking with as many students as possible, just to make sure that not only are we talking about the issues that we've heard a lot, but we're listening for more, and we're always constantly engaging and checking back on things too. And I think a place that the student body president can really enhance is becoming more of a leader, not only to the student body and to the university, but to the organization as a whole. A lot of the times we see the organizational leadership kind of fall on the speaker a little bit more, and sometimes the president and vice president sit back. But Kyle and I have talked a lot about how we really want to see more leadership within the organization from the president and the vice president, constantly checking in on all three branches, making sure that everything's not only running smoothly, but that every representative and every individual and every member of the organization is also having a good time in their academics and just personal lives as well. So it's a mixture between being a leader of an organization and also being somebody to put yourself out there and collaborate with different student organizations and understand the university.
Okay, thank you, Erin. Zach, now you can respond, or sorry, not respond. Your turn to answer the question.
Sure. So I've always come to view the role of student body president, or frankly, any head of an organization, captain of a ship, whatever it might be, as the sole person in charge of maintaining total and complete responsibility of that organization and those who serve in it. I can think of no three greater prerequisites, I think, for the role than experience, honest and integrity-filled leadership, and at the end of the day, a communication with an emphasis on the listening. That, I think, and embodies what the student body president must have. And I think we've seen parts of that be embodied in former presidents, even before the ones which Erin and I have had the opportunity to get to know on a very personal level. But I think there needs to be a greater understanding and trust in the student body president on behalf of the students, that the concerns that are voiced to them are not going to be dismissed. In many cases, they must be continuously amplified and listened to in ways which haven't been done before. The student body president should be in all times totally engaged with the students, showing up at many different events, which they in many other ways should have no reason to be at. But as that, the leader up at the top with the full responsibility of that office, I think you need people who are going to show up. You're going to need people who have the experience to make sure the organization runs smoothly and can serve students as best as possible. And you need leaders who are going to answer the tough questions. You need leaders who are going to tell it straight, and at the end of the day, deliver exactly what you need fixed to the administration or to elected officials. That's what I think the student body ought to be, or the student body president ought to be.
Thank you, Zach. So the next question, obviously, Zach and Erin, you've both served in the UPUA this past year, and you are definitely more than aware that there are the fair share of disagreements within the UPUA. So this question is for Zach first, but how would you handle internal disagreements within the UPUA?
Thank you. So serving this past year as chair, I've actually helped mediate many different disagreements between representatives, as well as different students who might have concerns with the UPUA, and helping address those concerns head on. I think it's important to remember that when you, especially in the role of student body president, are looking to bridge gaps or looking to work across different branches, especially within the student government, you need people who are not only going to listen to every side of a story, but who are ultimately going to help facilitate the dialogue rather than just step in the place of those people involved in them and try to take over. We should in many ways be trying to find ways to ensure that dialogue is carried out in a very civil manner, taking the time to talk with the representatives who might have disagreements, and ensuring that together you collaborate with those two different reps or other members of the organization to create the best way forward in a way which works for everybody.
Thank you, Zach. Erin, you may answer now.
Yeah, I think the approach that Kyle and I have been talking a lot about is more of a proactive approach. We want to make sure that when you come into an organization, whether it be UPUA, whether it be any other organization, but specifically UPUA, a way that you can kind of mediate some disagreements is by getting to know each other. I think that's a way that the 14th Assembly really could have stepped up a little bit more. We kind of have events where we can get to know each other, but we didn't have a retreat right in the beginning. We didn't have ways that the three branches could get to know each other. A lot of the times it's one branch is off to the side and listening to each other, and another's off to the other side. So first of all, it's a lot about just knowing each other as people. And I've also been a part of a lot of the conversations between students, both in the organization and people that have been observing the organization about the dynamics of UPUA. And if anybody's been in a General Assembly, they'll know that sometimes I speak up at the end. And something that I've constantly tried to bring up is we say the phrase betterment of student life. And I think a lot of the times when we're in 233A or we're in 314 Hub, sometimes we can forget that we're also bettering the students that are in that room too. And so being aware that we're not just advocating, we're not just an outside organization, we're also advocating for each other. And so definitely listening and making sure that every single person gets their opinion across, because no matter what your opinion is, it's valid. And it needs to be heard. And you're speaking up for not only yourself, but you're speaking up for your constituents as well. And so it's about listening and having those discussions, because sometimes when you disagree, that's the most productive discussions ever, because it gets you to think differently. But making sure that respect is definitely one of the biggest parts of UPUA, and also just getting to know each other.
Thank you, Erin. Our next question is one that has been fairly popular in the past, so we are bringing it back from the vice presidential debate. If you could have the unilateral power to fix one pressing issue that faces the Penn State student body, what would it be and why? And Erin, if you'd like to answer first.
That's a really tough one, because definitely a big thing about Penn State, we have so many students and everybody goes through something differently. You could be from the same hometown, have the same major, live in the same dorm, and you could have a completely different Penn State experience. So that's kind of hard to narrow down, but I would say the one that we've definitely need to tackle a lot more than we have in the past is food and housing security. I actually got to sit on some of the food and housing security task force meetings that President Barron has put together, and we just need to find more ways that students don't have to worry about those simple things in their day. There's already academics on the plate. There's already personal issues on the plate, and finding food and finding housing should definitely not be some of the stuff that students are worrying about. So whether it's making sure that there's options for every student, or it's affordable for every student to just basically have the survival tools, is something that really needs to be addressed on campus.
Thank you, Erin. Now to Zach.
Thank you. Well, I definitely say that there are quite a few problems at Penn State, and so it is a little tough to find one that works just fine to cover, I think, the biggest problems. I will say, personally, the one that hits home to me is solving the rape culture on campus. I think it goes without saying that, especially with the Department of Education saying it, and we don't need to, that this is a culture which has existed at Penn State for years. It's something which I think the administration in many ways has failed to address. It's something that student leaders have failed to address. It's something that we simply cannot ignore anymore, because I agree that it comes down to having a successful academic career only after you know that you are safe on the campus in which you study. And it's hard to do so when you know that the administration is slow on Title IX reporting, or that the administration is slow to get students the resources that they need from CAPS, or things like that, or even that the student government isn't doing enough to focus on it. In the past, UPUA has worked to cover sexual violence awareness and prevention for 1 week out of the year. This is a problem which exists obviously far beyond just 1 week. We can't just limit ourselves to that one conversation. And so something that Lexi and I have really emphasized this year is tackling the issues head on, one of which is that culture. Sexual assault and misconduct needs to be stopped at its roots. And we've introduced a plan which gets at that, starting with reporting and ensuring that the university holds up its commitment, which is now almost 5 years overdue since the last time we've had a survey, and puts out a survey so that we know exactly where these sexual assaults are occurring, and so that we can get them before they occur moving forward. As I mentioned, creating a role within the UPUA to ensure that we are looking at this all year round. Those are just some of the initiatives, but at the end of the day, that's the one problem that I would work to solve. It's hard to think of others without addressing that first.
Thank you, Zach. So the next question will be for Erin first. In what ways does your executive ticket plan to build and maintain strong and meaningful relationships with elected officials on all levels of government?
Do you mean like federal and state, or do you mean just at the university? Sorry.
You could say both at the university and also local, state, and federal government levels.
Absolutely. So one of the main things that Kyle and I have been displaying throughout our campaign, and one of the main things that we think that UPUA and the university itself can really benefit from, is more collaboration. We have now the Department of Outreach, which is going to be mainly tasked with that collaboration of organizations. But something that I've seen UPUA do in the past is we sit down and we hear from representatives and we hear from chairs what they would like to see, and we hear from students what they would like to see. And then usually the next step is, okay, how can I get this initiative done? We actually would encourage that we take a step back from that and we say, okay, before we get into how to get through this idea, let's see who we can work with, who we can collaborate with in order to do so. Because advocacy is great when you have a group of individuals do it, but it's even stronger when you have such like the whole entire community doing it. So making sure we have those collaborations off the bat before we even move into the next steps. So we'd like to see that that's one way that we'd like to maintain relationships at the university level. But more so, for example, one of our initiatives is creating a roundtable between student leaders and borough and the neighborhood association, or the borough council and neighborhood association. We have a borough council representative and liaison currently, and there's students that are able to go to the borough if they'd like to. And we've had office hours in the past, and those don't typically seem to work because they're not typically in a right location or the right timing that's convenient for students. And so we want to have roundtables and just more discussions in order to be able to foster better relationships. Another big thing that we're trying to do is, like I said, when you advocate, it shouldn't be edited, it shouldn't be abbreviated. A form of advocacy that I found to be really effective the past year in UPUA is gathering testimonials from students when they have something go on. So, for example, if you're talking about food and housing security, getting actual quotes from students and actually hearing their stories and writing them down, consolidating them, not editing them, not translating them, and just giving them to people like people in the state government, people in borough, people at the university, to make sure that we're actually getting across the raw feelings of students. Another thing is this past year in governmental affairs, I worked as the federal state liaison, and I worked to find different ways to advocate. So I worked on a video advocacy, because a lot of the times we see phone banking and we see letter writing, but it's more personal. And that's a big thing about advocacy. The more personal that you can make advocacy, the more effective it is.
Thank you, Erin. Now, Zach, you may answer the question.
Could you please repeat the question?
Oh, sure. In what ways does your executive ticket plan to build and maintain strong and meaningful relationships with elected officials on all levels of our government? So that could be within Penn State and then also local, state, and federal government.
Okay, thank you. So as the chair of Gov Affairs for this past year, it's been my sole honor in many ways to communicate on behalf of the committee, and in many ways working directly with the president to communicate on behalf of the student body with elected officials all the time. I actually just received a letter from Senator Pat Toomey just the other day confirming his willingness to cooperate on a Sammy's Law, which is a federal piece of legislation right now that's in committee, so he can't support it because he's not on the committee. But the point is that we have that relationship there and growing. We've been working extensively in that realm, sending letters. That's always been one of my favorite things to do, is writing letters to folks and ensuring that we're reaching out for the holidays, that we're reaching out on birthdays and things like that via social media and via the letter, via the mail. We are building a relationship, which is the first and most important part of advocacy. Imagine walking up to imagine walking up to your mom and asking, "Mom, can I borrow the car?" And you just sat there and yelled at your mom the last few hours saying, "Oh, I need the car, I need the car, I need the car." There's a level of advocacy that's got to be there in terms of building the relationship before the ask comes. That's been where I've been most qualified, working with the Lion Caucus and Capitol Day, helping to build those relationships with Harrisburg legislators, as well as in the federal government realm too. Locally, I've been working pretty closely with the county commissioners. We had this whole voter seminar set up for, County Commissioner Mike Pipe and State Representative Scott Conklin to come in and talk with students about the Pennsylvania Act 77, which the governor signed this past year, and allowed a lot of different ways to ensure that students, as well as all Pennsylvanians, could exercise their right to vote. It extended the registration deadline, it extended the absentee ballot deadline, and it also created mail-in ballots and the ability to do so. And so that relationship is critical, making sure that students know that those opportunities are there. That's so important. So Lexi and I really want to work on maintaining those relationships from year to year, because admittedly, it's been difficult from chair of Gov to chair of Gov to chair of Gov. It's a busy position as it is. So we actually propose that we create a Department of Governmental Relations, which focuses explicitly on maintaining those relationships so that we can best serve the student body throughout the entire year. We don't need to worry about introducing ourselves as maybe thoroughly as we do on a year-to-year basis because we have had these relationships. They are going to be maintained. They have our Christmas card on their fridge. I mean, these are relationships which need to be there if we're serious about advocating on behalf of students as effectively as possible. And that's just one of the ways in which we plan to do it. But we've been doing it for a whole year now, and it has to continue.
Thank you, Zach. So the next question will be for Zach first. This is a question that was submitted by a student, and this has definitely been a very hot topic of discussion lately with everything that has been going on. So the administration has stated that they will not be prorating tuition for students in the wake of COVID-19. However, both Erin and Zach have voted for a resolution calling on a resolution within UPUA calling on the administration to explore some sort of proration. How will you continue these efforts within your administration?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I did vote in favor of that bill. I actually helped sponsor it too, because ultimately, like, that is our job, is to make sure that the student voices which are being raised the loudest, and even those that aren't being raised the loudest, are heard at the highest levels of the administration as well as government. With regard to the bill, I also supported the amendment which allowed different language to focus more on exploring the opportunity of so, rather than demanding that something happen or even having the exact numbers. It's not our job to have exactly the kind of tuition reimbursements that might be suggested in that bill figured out on a perfect basis. But at the end of the day, it must be our responsibility to push those voices and amplify them at the highest level possible. Yeah, I would say that that's it.
Thank you, Zach. Now, Erin, if you could answer.
Yeah, I also voted in favor of the bill or the resolution as well. I think that one of the biggest things that we can see as a student government do better is you shouldn't just go to administration with student needs, get an answer, and then deal with the answer. So for example, when it comes to prorating tuition, we see a lot of students have this need. And so although the administration has already spoken out that they won't prorate tuition, it doesn't mean that the conversation should end, and it doesn't mean that it will end. Kyle and I really want to continue to have this conversation. And at the end of the day, a lot of it surrounds affordability. And so even if we can't maybe get the full prorated tuition, if we can get some other way where students can have more comfort in how their affordability is and more comfort of their financial state, that could be another end goal. So it's not always about asking for the first thing, getting an answer, and then moving forward. It's about asking for the first thing, saying why, bringing those testimonials, bringing those actual student stories of why it's important, getting that across, hearing the answer, and then saying, okay, well, that's the answer that you gave me, but how can we move forward to make sure that students still feel like they have a relief from the conversation?
Okay, thank you, Erin. So our next question is, please name 3 endorsements, 2 or 3 if you're able, that you have directly worked with in the past, and describe a little bit about your work with these endorsements. So Erin, if you could answer this question first.
Yeah, so Chelsea Wood was one of the first people to endorse the campaign, and I was completely flattered the second that she endorsed the campaign. I came into UPUA as a freshman, and I sat on the Academic Affairs Committee as one of my first committees. And you know, she's a tough female leader. She knows how to get a job done. She knows how to put herself out there, and she knows how to effectively communicate. And she taught me a lot about how to communicate student needs to people like faculty senate and to administrators, and really get it across effectively. So the fact that she was willing to support me, I was completely honored, and she's one of my favorite people, both personally and professionally. The second one that I would say that I'm really excited to have as an endorsement is Jared Martin. Jared and I were on freshman council together, and he didn't end up continuing UPUA after the 13th Assembly, but he's one of the strongest advocates that I know. He is involved in so many other great things, and that's a great thing about the organization, is you can see somebody and work with them for an entire year, and then they could go off and do different things, and you still have that connection. So having his support and how much he's supported and how many ideas he's contributed also has just been amazing. So between Chelsea and Jared, there's so many other endorsements that I'm so proud to have worked with and so proud to have engaged, not only throughout these past 4 weeks, but throughout my time at Penn State. And I'm so excited to work with them and many more people in the future.
Thank you, Erin. Now over to Zach.
Again, it is difficult to find the three which I suppose stand out to me the most. But I have built relationships with every single one of our endorsements in one way or another. And I am so proud to call each and every one of them my friend in one way or another, personally and professionally. I would say, okay, one which has always, I've really looked up to in many different ways would be Max Myers. He is the president of the College Republicans. Max and I have a pretty long history working together on things like PSU votes. I actually helped moderate a debate between him and some other College Republicans members, the College Democrats and the College Independents, on climate action policy, talking about the most effective ways which Congress and even Harrisburg on the state level can ensure that we leave this earth better than we found it simply for having lived in it. And so working with him on that sort of nonpartisan collaboration has always been an extreme pleasure. Another one which I am just thrilled to have the support of would be Eddie Richardson, who this past year served as the Black Caucus's first community group representative seat, or community group representative. Eddie and I have talked so often about all the ways in which the UPUA can and must do better to truly represent the students at Penn State and ultimately just to function better as a cohesive unit. He has always had, I think, some of the most brilliant ideas, and so getting his support was phenomenal. And then I suppose one near and dear to my heart would be Nora Van Horn, who currently this past year served as the UPUA's Director of Sustainability. Words do not describe how much I admire this person. She is one of the most hardworking and dedicated, but I think one of the most important parts is she's critically thinking about the systems which our university and our world have in place, because sustainability is so much more than just a buzzword, but at the end of the day, it's about the systems which we're creating. If we're not putting out initiatives or ideas that are truly sustainable, then it's not worth talking about, because we do not leave the university better than we found it if that's the case. We've talked about the nuances of different programs which Congress has put in place over the years, which the university has put in place. So working with her on different environmental things has been absolutely incredible. I remember actually working with her to bring about zero waste at our Election Day celebration this past year, back as Gov Affairs Chair, and that was the first time I really got to see her drive and motivation. So those have always, I suppose, stood out to me as some of the not top three, but three which I am super proud to have the endorsement of.
Thank you, Zach. So this next question will also be for Zach first. Obviously, the UPUA is a very important organization, but there are so many other spaces on campus and other organizations on campus to be involved in. So which spaces, apart from UPUA, do you put yourself in to inform yourself of the struggles of other Penn Staters?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think it's important to note that as a white man, I carry a good deal of privilege and always have my entire life. I don't think you can have conversations, especially with multicultural communities on campus, without first discussing that aspect of it and figuring out how to have the conversation moving forward. I have always done my best to show up for communities which have often been overlooked by the UPUA, and found new ways to get them involved, whether it be in the assembly, by helping create the community group seats this past year, but also showing up at different events. That's, I think, the biggest part, is showing up. I have always done my best to help tell the stories of other Penn Staters who haven't necessarily had their voices as amplified by the institutions that be as often as they should. And so I have always found that my engaging in different activities on campus and different events, which I otherwise might not have been, whether it be because it's not in my major or I'm not in that organization, has made the experience all the more worthwhile.
Thank you, Zach. Erin, if you could answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I also have shown up to many different events on campus, not only things that are in my major or involvements that I'm currently in. I'm involved in homecoming, I'm involved in Thon, and I'm involved as an active sister of Omega Phi Alpha National Service Sorority. So between those 4 organizations, I've been involved in other people's organizations and other people's events. And I've gotten to not only show up, but listen and engage students too. And so hearing from them and hearing not only how UPUA can help, but how me as a student can help them is one of the biggest things. One of my main initiatives that I was so privileged to work on this past year and a half has been global competency and fluency training. And it's an initiative that is two-sided. It's one, getting a training for students and also getting trainings for faculty as well, so that everybody can be more culturally aware. And not only are we supposed to be a welcoming community, but just a community where we can feel like everybody's engaged and everybody can find their home at Penn State. And so through that, I also got to work and create a roundtable with 56 different organizations, ranging from religious organizations to cultural groups and many others. And I see this as just the beginning. I'd love to see way more organizations and way more people show up to this roundtable for especially such an important topic that I've seen students, faculty, administration alike all band behind and really want to see happen. And so I think that the main way is you can't just show up and you can't just invite somebody. You have to engage them. You have to listen to them. And you have to make sure that not only are they being heard, but you have their trust to be able to say, okay, I heard you and I can help you move forward with this. And that's a big thing. It's not about advocating for people. It's about advocating with them. I don't want to go up to a student and say, hi, how can I help? Hi, what's your issue? Okay, how can I fix it? I want to say, hi, what's your issue? How can I help you? And so that's a big thing.
Thank you, Erin. This next question will be for Erin first.
Actually, I had a question. I can't find the hand raise section, but is there a way I could respond?
Yeah, just for future notice, if you click on participants, it should be in there somewhere.
Yes.
But yes, if you have trouble finding it, you can just say hand raise in the chat and that also works. So Zach, if you'd like to respond.
Yeah, I completely agree. You need to engage with those that you're showing up for. And I found that one of the most resonating sentiments that I've had with, or heard at least from the different representatives and community members that I have engaged with, is that specifically with regard to global competency and influency training, it can't be something that is in any way optional. I think it's primarily designed so that if you create a system which is not totally inclusive and requires that all faculty and staff are mandated to do it, you're not going to get the racist, quite frankly, faculty and staff to take it. That's been the greatest concern, which members of the Latino caucus have directly relayed to me. That's been the greatest concern that members of the Black caucus have directly relayed to me. And I think it goes miles to showing that engagement does matter, but you really do need to understand the nuances of the concerns that are being raised and not overlook them for, for this or that reason. They have to be addressed head on.
Can I respond again?
Erin, you can respond.
Yeah. So I completely agree that that's a sentiment that I've heard a lot throughout my work on the initiative, and something that I'm really trying to tackle head on too. Something that we do want to avoid with such an important training is you want to stray away from mandating, or at least the term mandating, because when you say, okay, here's something that you're going to be mandated to do, oftentimes it comes across as if it's almost like a punishment, and especially this type of topic, you don't want to have as a punishment. So you want to more incentivize and get people excited, because they should be excited to learn more about other members in their community. And so that's one of the main ways where that's why we have the roundtable, to really engage the different voices and see how can we do this, and how can we work with you in order to excite the community and incentivize the community to be a part of such an important initiative on campus.
Thank you, Erin.
Mhm.
This next question will be for Erin first. Do you think that certain organizations have influenced UPUA decisions in the past, and how would you plan to keep this influence out of your administration?
Absolutely. I think that when it comes to advocacy, you need to reach out to as many orgs as possible, as I said, as many students as possible. But I don't think that influence has any place within UPUA. And there's been a lot of different conversations throughout the past 3 years that I've had within the organization and outside of the organization. And there is general concern from members and from students in general about outside influence on the organization. And Kyle and I are attacking a zero tolerance policy to this. You know, we're all adults and we all have the task to advocate for each and every single student, no matter if you're in an organization, no matter if you're strictly there for academics, no matter your story, no matter what. Every stater is important and every stater's story is important. And so maintaining an integrity and trust and honesty is something that Kyle and I really have highlighted, and something that we're going to continue to do throughout our administration as well.
Thank you, Erin. Now over to Zach.
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely a concern which has been raised. I will say I think it's hard to talk about maintaining honor and perhaps integrity when even the greatest concern of the organization probably being referenced is the one which a certain running mate wasn't able to answer the question to. And that's, of course, been very difficult in many ways. I've spoken with members of that organization directly about my concern that I've had with its influence in the organization, the UPUA as a whole. I've sat down and laid out, especially when I was just elected as Gov Chair, I made sure that the leaders up at the top were not going to be in any way influenced by that kind of, we'll say extracurricular involvements. That is something that you need to be honest and transparent about, and it's hard to foster that culture if you're unable to answer the question. I do think at the end of the day, there are nuances that come about with it and everything like that. But there's a level of personal responsibility and accountability which have been ingrained in me, whether it be through talking about what I think a leader ought to be as an officer in the military or as a contributing citizen to society. I think you need to be able to answer the questions if we're seriously honest about tackling the issue of influence in the UPUA. There must be a zero tolerance policy. Amen to that. But it is hard to talk about that if we're going to brush certain other organizations under the rug.
Thank you, Zach. Erin, you may have 1 minute to respond.
Absolutely. So I completely agree that we need to have these conversations, and it's a conversation that I think hasn't really been fully addressed in the past, and it has been brushed off. And it's a conversation that I want to continue to have when we're in the organization. I do believe, though, that there's a difference between brushing off a topic and not engaging in any speculation. I know who Kyle is, and I know who I am, and I know how our campaign has been run. It's been with complete honesty, integrity, and transparency. And we're here for the students. We've been working with the students, and we're here because of our passion for advocacy. And so I think that we need to have these conversations, but also maintain a level of respect and maintain a level of where we can have open conversations and open dialogue, which is something that I think UPUA needs to see a lot more of, and just the university as a whole needs to see a lot more of.
Thank you, Erin. Zach, do you have your hand up?
I do. Is that okay?
Yes, you may have 1 minute to respond.
Okay, I should need less. I'll just say it is hard to tackle that level of honesty and respect toward those people who have the greatest concern when you're unable to answer a simple yes or no question. We're not talking about, revealing anything in depth or anything like that. It's just an honest answer that you should come to expect from a student leader. Students deserve nothing less. I frankly would completely agree with you that I know Kyle is one of, by far, the coolest people I've met. And to be honest, I haven't, gotten to talk with him that often at all. But I know that through his service to the military, which I am very appreciative for and respect in so many different ways, he understands that level of personal responsibility and accountability too. That has to be expected of leaders. You need to be able to answer those questions.
Thank you, Zach. Erin, is your hand up again, or did you?
Yeah, can I just say one quick?
So I would ask that you hold off since you have already responded. I do have a quick follow-up question. So you will each have 1 minute. We probably need less to answer this. Obviously, in the vice presidential debate, there was the most asked question of students, so I would be remiss if I did not ask it again in this debate. So tying into the previous question, UPUA has a history of being influenced by special interest groups, especially including secret societies. Can you make a pledge today to remain unaffiliated with Skull and Bones, Parmy New, and/or Lion's Paw during your term as president if elected? And this will go to Erin first.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I am not a part or affiliated with any of those organizations, and I don't plan to be. I'll answer the yes or no question that Zach had posed before. My campaign is not and will not, and my administration will not be affiliated with these societies. We have a group of individual endorsers that are there, and we have groups of individuals that are there because they have found support and they've found a way to relate through our campaign and through what we are pushing. And so we have students that are here to advocate for themselves and advocate with other people. So no, I'm not a part of any of those societies, and I would like to continue to have the conversation within UPUA about how we can have a zero tolerance policy.
Thank you, Erin. Zach, if you could answer the question.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't think it's worth discussing. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not affiliated with these organizations, nor is my campaign. Very similarly, the endorsements and connections that we have been using, the channels are of the utmost professionalism, and any sort of personal relationship which might be there entwined was throughout college and just getting to know people. Frankly, we are very committed to transparency and honesty at all levels. More importantly, not more importantly, in tandem, we are very committed to answering questions. And I do appreciate my opponent answering on behalf of another student, but that I don't think should have been the case. I wish that, and I would expect that from an executive of this organization, or any organization for that matter, to be able to speak for themselves and be able to represent themselves fully and transparently as possible. It is very hard to talk about creating a culture in which we do not answer questions. I think that must be established. You need to know that if you go to the UPUA president or the UPUA vice president, they will answer anything truthfully and honestly, because if they're not answering this question, what else aren't they answering? And that's not something I don't necessarily think that will be the case or ever has been the case, but it is not a path I think that the student body deserves this organization to go down. It needs to be transparent and honest.
Thank you, Zach. So the next question is kind of bringing it back towards more your platform and what your campaign is running on. So beginning with Zach, in your opinion, what is the most important part of your platform, and what is your plan to fulfill that promise for the student body?
Okay, very similar to what we just talked about, transparency, first and foremost. We have a very large part of our platform which has gone unaddressed in previous campaigns, and that revolves specifically around the role of the executive in shaping the organization as a whole. The executive has the ability at a snap of a finger to create entities which at the end of the day will include more students, will allow the organization to advocate on behalf of the entire student body so much more effectively. So we are committed to improving your student government through many different ways, whether it be increasing our transparency with our discretion, budgetary details, that needs to be transparent. We should be increasing our engagement with journalists who are already engaged to their fullest extent, even today. Thank you for joining us. With some kind of a weekly press conference in which you can press us on questions which are not always offered or given the opportunity to be asked, I should say, during General Assembly meetings. We should be encouraging that kind of a cross communication of transparency and trust. And then also working to create many different new roles, whether that be expanding the Director of Wellness to focus on a totally expansive Director of Student Wellness, which focuses on the university as a whole, as well as the UPUA's Director of Wellness, to ensure that we as representatives and executives and judicial board members are also maintaining that level of mental capacity throughout the entire year. That is something that is first and foremost, I think, the responsibility of the executive to tackle. Other things which really do come to mind and I'm passionate about, we're working on right now with students collaborating from the ground up, is civic engagement, working to institutionalize voter registration, whether it be at new student orientation, move-in week, or even at the pre-semester checks, which we all have to do on Lion Path. Students at Stanford University are reaching out to me and asking, first, how are we branding PSU Vote so well? And second, is there anything that we can share between each other? And they have shared that they've received somewhere upwards of 95% of all students registered to vote then and there before the classes have even started. If we're serious about turning out our student voters in 2020 for this upcoming November election, it begins with things like that. It begins primarily with collaboration from the ground up. That is also been a very focal point of our campaign. It is living, it is breathing. Our platform is constantly updating with the ideas and concerns which are being addressed on a daily basis.
Thank you, Zach. Erin, now if you could answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad you said collaboration, because collaboration is definitely the biggest part of Kyle and I's campaign and of our platform. An important thing to note about our platform is, while we have 72 initiatives and we did launch them the first day, it's not that we came up with these by ourselves. Absolutely, in no terms did we come up with these by ourselves. Something that people who have worked with me in the past in UPUA know, that every single meeting that I go to, every single time that I have a student interaction, I bring around my notebook and I bring around these highlighters and I write down notes, every single word that I can, and I highlight things. And Kyle has done the same. And so every single thing that is on our platform is because we've been collaborating with students over the time at our campus. And when we looked to see, okay, what should we put on our platform? We didn't say, okay, this is what I want, this is what I want. We looked in our notebooks, we looked in our notes. It's not just about engaging students during a campaigning period, which we have been doing. I think Verizon's gonna block my number and Outlook's gonna say I'm a spam email. I have multiple notes and multiple ideas, and a lot of the things it's been really nice to see is a lot of the things that students bring up are directly on our platform. But like I mentioned before, it's about that collaboration. It's not just when you need it. It's not just when you want it. It's all of the time. And so when you start those initiatives, saying not, okay, this is how UPUA is going to tackle this. This is not how academic affairs is going to tackle this. Okay, who can we work with in order to get this done? And then we'll see what steps we can take. It's about collaboration, not only with organizations, but with students in general. Collaboration with offices, with as many people in the community as we can. And so collaboration has been key since day one and will continue to be the first thing that's on our mind from the second that we've started this platform until we can.
Thank you, Erin. Zach, you may respond.
Yeah, I really appreciate the number and multitude of initiatives which we're seeing on every campaign. I'm proud to say that with this upcoming rollout of civic engagement, we'll be upwards of 76 initiatives. And while at the end of the day, I don't think numbers mean anything, because I think the UPUA is far too often, as I've often said, walked into the first General Assembly meeting with this laundry list of ideas. And a lot of those ideas primarily being, how can we collaborate with these organizations? We've really strove to not only understand those organizations from the ground up, and our diversity of organizations, or rather students from organizations who have supported us on the McKay Pathical team, goes to show it. But also those initiatives have always been in the works in one way or another. It's just a matter of the fact that Lexi and I do not have all of those answers. And frankly, no candidate ever will. Rather, like, we're emphasizing on the amplification of students who have ideas, but have no outlet in which to bring them about. This platform is not just Lexi and I's platform. This is the platform of students. This has been, from the start, the student body's platform. And that is why we are so proud to champion it. It's important to get the purposes of organizations right. And frankly, it hurts organizations when they are completely misunderstood and misrepresented. And it hurts organizations when they are more or less tasked with doing things in a campaign platform in which either already exists on campus in a different form, or which completely misses the mark in the way in which that organization structures. We cannot keep failing these organizations like that. That is why we need to be collaborating with them from the ground up, and we are so proud to have done so.
Thank you, Zach. Erin, if you would like to respond.
Absolutely. I kind of would like to push back a little bit on the implication that we're just tasking organizations. It's not that we sat down, had these ideas and say ourselves, okay, what organizations can we work with? No, these are conversations that we've had with the organizations, and this is what they've been telling us that they want to work on. And in the future, if that changes, then that changes. But that's another big thing. We have actionable steps, and we have what's happened in the past, and we have some ideas that people have come to us that they have, but it's not just about executing that. It's about continuously engaging in conversation. While we have the steps and everything, or we at least have an idea of the way that students would like projects and initiatives to come about, I would love if every single description on our platform changes, because the second that it changes, it means that we've engaged more voices, we've collaborated with more people, and that we're actually fitting the student need. And so that's something that I would love to see. And it's about that constant communication and reaching out to more people than we think that we can, and not just reaching out to the organization, but putting the idea out there on our UPUA platforms and saying, hey, this is an idea that we're thinking of working on. If you're interested, let us know. They don't have to be a part of an organization. It could just be a student in general.
Thank you, Erin. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go and move forward to the next question. So kind of tying it back to the role of the president and what the student body president does on a daily basis. Can you speak to your experience working with Penn State administrators? So Erin, if you could answer that question.
Yeah, so this past year, I really got to expand my collaborations with a lot of administrators and faculty. I was appointed in academic affairs as a UPUA faculty senator. So while I was not a college seat, I was the one non-college seat to be able to sit in faculty senate. I sat on the Committee of Education, and I've seen a lot of changes. I've even worked in faculty senate the past couple weeks with satisfactory, unsatisfactory grades. And I've worked with deans and with other faculty and staff and administration on campus. Another big thing that I did throughout the year was within governmental affairs, I worked a lot with the Board of Trustees. A lot of the times we see Board of Trustees as having an oversight and not really engaging with the student body, but with transparency and with communication, you need to see that bridge gap. And so something that I worked on this past year was getting a mixer type of event where UPUA could engage with the Board of Trustees, which we haven't really seen happen before, and use UPUA's advocacy to get across the student needs. But something that I'd like to see happen in the future is it not just be UPUA. It should be any organization that would like to that can go to the Board of Trustees. And that's about building that relationship with them. And it's something that I've worked on throughout the year. It's not just about inviting somebody, like I said, it's about that constant communication, especially when you don't need anything. It's about saying, oh, hey, I know we talked about this the last time in an email. I know we talked about this at the mixer, but here's an email of an update on some of the things that we're working on, and here's how we've looked to improve. How have you done this as well? So also within my other initiatives, I think I worked on upwards of 12 to 13 initiatives last year, and I got to be in a lot of different offices, from career services to Office of Educational Equity, and even more. And so I think relationships with administration and with faculty is something that I really have under my belt, and an experience that I have that I'm looking to grow the relationships in the future too.
Thank you, Erin. Zach, if you could answer.
Of course. So I also served as a faculty senator my sophomore year, freshman into sophomore year, as an academic representative for the College of Arts and Architecture. I came to Penn State as an acting major. I'm unfortunately no longer such, but that was an incredible opportunity to represent that college in faculty senate, on the committees of education, and then the committee of education, and then, outreach, not education, sorry, but then also in the faculty senate's general assembly. That was an incredible opportunity. I work extensively with the director of the Center for Character, Conscience, and Public Purpose to put on different civic engagement events, as it is part of the university's land-grant institution mission. And so I've worked extensively with Tim from that office. I've worked with Colonel McFeely, retired, who works with he's the director of the Veterans Affairs Department. We've worked extensively on implementing our POW MIA Chair of Honor. And then kind of in tandem with Mr. McFeely, we've also been working with President Barron himself to kind of get his blessing on the project, as well as university athletics to get it implemented within Beaver Stadium, as well as some of the other sporting areas around campus. I've worked incredibly close with the Office of Government and Community Relations, Vice President Moore there, as well as the Director of State, Federal, and Community Relations, and whether that be through Lion Caucus or through my services, the chair of the Governmental Affairs Committee. Those communication channels have got to be there, and they are. Transportation, I've also worked pretty close on. Not as close as I think I would have liked to, but we were in some pretty deep conversation as to electric scooters within the campus bounds within Pennsylvania as an entirety. I helped sponsor the bill to put it through. The idea is that it's not a university entity which is going to make the decision whether or not we allow electric scooters in Pennsylvania. Rather, it is the state government, as it is not allowed in the transportation code right now. And so having that conversation with him, Rob DeMeo has always been something I think of often. He wasn't in favor of electric scooters, don't get me wrong. Students are, so. And then also the Sustainability Institute, working with Doug Goodstein quite a lot, kind of as a mentor in many ways, but also we've been having conversations as to, in many ways, how to leave Penn State better, greener than we found it through different initiatives and collaborations with Eco Reps, Eco Action, Awaken State, Sunrise, things like that, and really working to emphasize that push for the university to do better for the future of its posterity? Yes, of its posterity, to name a few.
Thank you, Zach. So this next question will be for Zach first. Obviously, we spoke a little bit before about how to handle disagreements internally within the UPUA, but more specifically, how would you work through disagreements with your vice president if you were to be elected president?
Oh, that's a good one. I will say Lexi and I are no cookie cutter couple. We are in many ways very independent thinkers and have very different views of the world and of initiatives and the ways to better the university prior, especially to this campaign. What's been really interesting to me is through different conversations with her over the last few months, finding that kind of common ground in different initiatives and the way in which we view them has become more and more easy. Lexi obviously has a different Penn State story than I do. She has a different UPUA story than I do. She served in the executive department first, the executive branch, and then as a chair. I served as a representative and then as a chair. Even the way in which we've come into the UPUA has been very different. But at the same time, it's important to note that we have continuously just sat down and aired out our differences, whether it be in the direction we want to take the university or the organization, because we truly do have the best intentions at heart. And I think when we come upon that common ground, we recognize that it's not necessarily the most important thing, that the means which to get to the end might differ, but rather that the end goal is the exact same thing, and that is a more equitable, more sustainable, in every true sense of the word, and more collaborative Penn State, really working to ensure that our students have the best experiences possible. I guess we've been pretty good friends, and that's also helped things too. I will say that Lexi and I would consider Lexi my best friend in many different ways, and I don't just say that because we're campaigning together, but I literally mean it. She is somebody I also very much admire, the way in which she handles different organizations that she's a member of, College Dems, Lion Caucus, but also the way in which she runs the committee meetings for outreach has always really impressed me. She definitely stands out to me as a leader, and I guess it's just become easier over time because we've really gotten to know each other.
Thank you, Zach. Erin, if you could answer.
Absolutely. I cannot speak higher about Kyle, both personally and professionally. He is one of the greatest people that I've met and that I've interacted with. I'm sure Zach could agree. This campaigning period is one that definitely tries a relationship, with it being as long as it is, and with having to be as creative as we have to be. You definitely learn a lot about a person, and I've gotten to know Kyle even more outside of campaigning period as well from before. And so I think that the greatest thing that Kyle brings to the table is two things that I was looking when finding a running mate was somebody who has a fresh perspective, not only to UPUA and to the organization, but to the university as a whole. Being a student veteran and being an adult learner, he brings a lot of experience that I don't have, and a lot of people in UPUA have never seen. But he has just cool, fresh ideas. He knows how to sit back and listen. He knows how to engage other people. He knows what it's like to not be feeling welcomed on campus. And I feel like a lot of people have those different types of experiences as well. And so that fresh perspective is one of the greatest things that Kyle brings. And that's one of the main places of balance for us is I have a lot of UPUA experience knowing the ins and outs, and he has a lot of fresh experience not being in UPUA and not having seen it before, but also having had what my second qualification was is a strong leadership experience, both at the university, being the president of the Student Veterans Organization, and being in the Marines before. He has that strong leadership experience. He knows how to rally people around a common goal. He knows how to engage other people, like I said. So between the two of those, it's about sitting down and having conversations, no matter how long they are, no matter how hard the conversation might be. It's about being willing to sit down. And I've seen that so many times between the two of us throughout this whole entire thing. And again, he's such a great person, and I know that he can fulfill the role and excel in the role of vice president. And so I'm excited to see where he can take it.
Could you just talk a little bit more specifically on just how you would handle a disagreement between you and Kyle if it did arise?
Yeah, I think sometimes it could be from other people, it could be frowned upon when a president and vice president disagrees. But I think that's actually a way that you can make the relationship stronger. If both of us always agreed on everything, then there would be no progress, and there would be no continuation and expansion of conversation. And so I think even throughout the campaigning period, we've disagreed on certain parts of how we're going to do things or how we can most effectively advocate. But it's about sitting down, having the conversations, and learning just why people have those motivations and why you want to do it this way and I want to do it the other way. And you know, you're not always, especially with advocacy, you're not always going to have one student opinion. You're going to have multiple. So you're going to always have to think of how you can collaborate and make not compromises, but kind of like decide how or how not the advocacy is going to play out. And so I think having those conversations and sitting down, it leads to more progress. And so that's something that Kyle and I are committed to do. And when you sign on to something like an executive ticket, you sign on for time, you sign on to make sacrifices. But advocacy is not a sacrifice. It's a privilege, and it's something that we're so privileged to be able to do. And so having those conversations is one of the things that we're most excited to do.
Thank you, Erin. Zach, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to respond?
I have a question, I guess, for you first. Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Okay, it relates directly to this. So it's kind of a two-part. First, when did you and Kyle meet is one, and two, have you ever had a disagreement about the fact that you had mentioned that Kyle is somebody who very much so, really sits back and listens, but the role of vice president is so much more on the side of you need to have the experience of leading meetings, you need to be engaged the entire way through, know what's going on. Have you ever had those kind of disagreements, and how have you managed to kind of deal with them?
Yeah, so I met Kyle, I want to say 3 to 4 months ago. The whole entire semester I basically known Kyle, and I had heard about the great things that he'd done with the Veterans Organization before, so he was no stranger of a name to me. And, you know, while Kyle does have the capability to sit back and engage and listen, he has that experience with chairing meetings. Being the president of the Student Veterans Organization, that's what he had to do. He had to lead an organization, chair meetings, learn how to be firm, but also be approachable, which is really important, especially in a vice president when you're chairing a meeting. You shouldn't just be up there as a stoic leader, just sitting there. You need to also be approachable, and that's why the combination of Kyle's qualities makes him that way. Especially even the Marines, he led 13 other Marines in his time as an infantry rifleman, and so he's able to have that leadership experience and able to effectively and efficiently be able to engage in conversation.
Am I allowed to ask a follow-up?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so as you did mention, he did lead 13 Marines. That is incredible. With regard to directly transferable experience, he did mention himself that he has had no experience with parliamentary procedure, let alone modern rules of order, which is a requirement for the vice presidency, especially on day one. You know, we need leaders. I would, as a representative, need somebody in charge who can lead a meeting over Zoom, let alone in person, on day one, to ensure that we are serving the student body best. And he did mention during his debate that he would rely heavily on you as the president. And I've long thought that the president sits up in the front of the meetings in many ways, it's a photo shoot in many ways. I wish the student body president would be given the opportunity to do more than they do. Do you see that being maybe a room for disagreement as he relies on you, considering he does have no experience leading parliamentary procedure meetings?
No, so I wouldn't be fulfilling my position if I didn't, from the beginning, knowing that Kyle had never been in UPUA, it wouldn't have been a smooth relationship if I hadn't been helping him along from the beginning. And so I think when he said more when he relies on me, he's been relying on me in the past couple weeks and past couple months to teach him about UPUA, to teach him about modern rules of order, to teach him about parliamentary procedure. And so not only have we been campaigning together and spending so much time doing that together and reaching out to students together, we've been putting in overtime also, which is why we're so close now and why we have such a great relationship and know how to work with each other, is because we've also been working on those aspects as well. And so especially from how much he's learned today, he is such a quick learner. He can spit back anything at you, and he knows it like the back of his hand. And so I have full confidence that he'd be able to not only chair a meeting in person, but on Zoom, and also be able to tell you how to effectively run a meeting and what UPUA is and what it does.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you both. So the next question is kind of circling back a little bit more to internal conflict and issues that may arise within the UPUA. So this question is first for Erin. How will you work towards making all branches of the UPUA, including the legislative, the executive, and the judicial, feel equal and respected within the organization?
Yeah, this is definitely one of the biggest problems that UPUA's had in the past, and it's going to take strong leaders in order to be able to mediate this problem. When you have an organization, we have the three branches, but I think too often, like you mentioned, we see it as three separate branches, which is absolutely not. You can't get one thing done without another branch. Nothing runs smoothly without a cohesive unit between all three. And so like I touched on in the beginning, it's about getting to know each other, not just what role you do and how this person has worked within the organization, but just how are you as a student. This past year with the Director of Wellness, we saw a lot of events come up throughout the year that we could go to, and that was a great thing that I don't think UPUA has really seen before. But we did really see mainly the legislative branch or executive branch being involved in those, and not a lot of the times do we see the judicial branch. Even at Assembly, you see most of the executive members and you see the legislative members, but the judicial members, for usually reasons in order to effectively do their role, we don't see them as much. But it's about creating welcoming communities in Assembly, in 314 Hub, outside of that too, to make sure that there's always, you're not just working with each other, you know each other, and you can say, oh, that person's in UPUA, this is what they like, this is what they've done, this is who they are. And so it's also about making sure that people's contributions are always highlighted and respected. It's not just about who sponsored a bill. It's not about whose name is on the bill or who you've seen go to the meetings. It's about listing every single person that's been a part of it, because I can definitely say that every single member in UPUA, past, present, future, has made such a great contribution to the organization, whether it goes noticed or unnoticed. But it needs to be more noticed than it is unnoticed. And I think that's something that we need to highlight. And another big thing that needs to be worked on is a lot of the times we don't even know what the roles of each other are. We have multiple directors and multiple liaison spots, but I don't know if every member could confidently say what each member does. So it's about having the respect for members, not only as people, but also as people that you're working with. It's about a balance of that, and really making sure that the executive branch fosters that type of example and sets that example so that the rest of the organization can follow.
Zach, if you would like to answer.
Of course. I would definitely agree that I've seen this divide between the three different branches over the years. More so, I think, between the judicial and the executive and legislative. Quite often, it's that the executive and the legislative will know each other quite well, whether that be because of communication and collaboration on the steering committee, or just in general, more engagement with each other at General Assembly meetings. You don't have all of the judicial board justices coming to General Assembly meetings. They don't need to, but I mean, to be frank, the reason we don't see judicial board justices in the UPUA office, we don't see them at General Assembly wondering what we're doing, we don't see them at Director of Wellness events, because they do not feel welcome, because we do not, like you had mentioned, celebrate the work that they do. And a lot of it comes down to rhetoric. A lot of it comes down to questions that I think the executive should be asking. Why are you using rhetoric that's along the lines of, why are you doing this? It should so much be more, that is so cool. Like, it is so awesome that you want to spend I think it's a Monday night, talking about legislation, which we have passed, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, if it's not Monday nights. You should be in many ways super proud to be in the branch which you do serve in, because they each do have three unique purposes. They have three unique goals for the organization to function as a whole. I completely agree that they should be working together, but in many ways, specializing in their own certain category contributes to the overall functioning of the organization. And you need to be able to celebrate all three of those aspects. We've often talked, myself and other representatives, judicial board justices, executive board members, about simple, like really simple things. The size of our office. It is, for an organization of upwards of 100 people, far too small. At the end of the day, you cannot effectively create an environment that is quote unquote inclusive in a room which can hold no more than 25 people at one time. Frankly, like, it doesn't help the organization internally. It doesn't help the students whose resources are sitting in the office, never being distributed, because nobody who probably would be able to do it wants to come into the office because it's not a welcoming place. It's not just size, but the rhetoric plus the size, plus even the friendships and the friend groups which the executive and legislative and judicial board all share with their own respective entities. It all plays into this feeling of unwelcome and exclusivity. And so I think you're exactly right that the president ought to, from the very beginning, foster this idea of collaboration and learning what the other branches are doing in the student government, because students who are in the judicial board do incredible work, just the exact same as legislative representatives, just the same as directors, and even the president and vice president, the chief of staff. To neglect any of those roles is only building up more and more fences between the organizations. You can't do it. I think it was also mentioned earlier, a spring retreat would have been awesome, because that's the time when I think the president should have been able to sit down and say, like, let's go around the room. Let's talk about why you decided to serve in the judicial board. What interests you about, really deciding the meaning and the intention of legislation as opposed to writing it? What interests you in leading an executive department as opposed to serving as a representative? Everybody is in the UPUA because they want to serve others, but the way in which they want to serve others is so different. And we really do need to take the time to get to understand why they want to serve, why they're there, and kind of the impact that they want to make. In doing so, you create an environment that is inclusive, it is celebratory, and that is pervasive. It's beyond UPUA. The university needs to be far more inclusive and celebratory of the diversity of its students, not just the UPUA, albeit it has many troubles internally as well. I think like you need to understand what they're doing, you need to celebrate it, and find different opportunities to really get each other involved. That's primarily it. Dignity, respect, honor, and professionalism should be shown to everybody, regardless of what they're involved in. There should be no rhetoric that's, why are you doing this? Or not so much, you should ask why somebody is interested in doing something. But it's the way in which you say it, which has for years created this bad culture, and you need to address it.
Thank you, Zach. This next question will be for you to start. So you've both talked a little bit earlier about different organizations that you're involved with across the university, different spaces that you've put yourself in. So what specific extracurricular experiences do you have outside of UPUA, and how will these other experiences help you fulfill the duties of the presidency?
So I mentioned earlier that I helped found an organization called Lion Caucus. This is a student advocacy organization that's run through the Office of Government Community Relations, working directly with Zach Moore, Mike Stephan, as well as Bree Mapston from that office to create an organization which fosters new ways to advocate on behalf of the university. And then serving eventually first as its treasurer and then as its vice president has allowed me in many ways to help really form and steer that organization in the direction that it's currently going. I decided not to run for president last year and instead give my full and total energy to the role of chair of governmental affairs to really then reshape that organization from my own perspective as a chair. But that executive leadership in Lion Caucus has been crucial. I would say I don't want to politicize the military or the ROTC, and I won't do it. But I will say that the ROTC has taught me so many different values and virtues that I think in many ways every citizen should come to embody. Our new CEO just recently came in. He really emphasizes the idea of treating others with dignity and respect and professionalism at every sense, at every step of a conversation, of every step of a collaborative experience. And that's really stuck home with me. I've long decided, I think it was freshman year I decided to join up, it was. And so I've long decided since to live a life of service, and that kind of service has always kind of incorporated itself into all that I do as Gov Affairs too. I don't necessarily stay involved in the arts anymore as much as I would like to if I had the time, to be frank with you. But back in high school, I was in the drum line in the marching band. I was a tenor drummer, and I was also in the musical. I said it in some video, I can't sing or dance and will not try to do so at the same time for a very long time. But I will say that I've always been connected to the arts and have always really appreciated the contributions with which our artistic community gives to the community as a whole as well. And so I do try to show up as many different thespian and NRT and School of Music performances on Friday, Saturday nights as possible. I very much think that should be something the student body president does. If we're serious about encouraging other student leaders from across campus to going, you should know that like the student body president is inviting you to go see a show. You know, hopefully I'll have better luck than Abe Lincoln did, but at the end of the day, I would very much like to take student presidents to go see theatrical shows. And I would very much like to go and help celebrate the arts in that sense too. And it all comes down to this sort of a salad bowl, this hodgepodge of different experiences, which ultimately lead to the creation of character, conscience, not like the office public purpose, but very much so the kind of leadership expertise and leadership qualities which you need to fully empathize with the student body and celebrate all that it at the same time accomplishes. There's so much there. Those are some of them. I bike everywhere. That's not an extracurricular activity, but that's a big part of our platform because I bike and I've long experienced those those problems too. Those are just some of the other things I do on campus.
Thank you, Zach. Erin, if you could answer.
Yeah. I also wish I had more time to be involved in the arts. I used to do theaters and musicals, and music is a big part of my life, and I wish I had more time to do that too. So I agree on that part. Being at Penn State, I'm currently a Homecoming 2020 University Relations Captain. I'm the faculty and Commonwealth captain, outreach captain. So it's kind of an extension of the work that I do in UPUA. I'm working to bring those connections and those relationships that I've built and make more connections and relationships with other organizations as well. And so Homecoming is just, it's so many students are involved, and it's such a great organization. And the more people that we can involve, both faculty and Commonwealth, is really my passion in the organization. I was also a Thon Dance Relations Committee member, and I absolutely love Thon. I joined this year. I stood in the stands last year with my sorority, and I was blown away by the experience so much that I knew that I wanted to be involved. So I've loved every single student and every single experience that I've had within the organization. And then I'm also an active sister of Omega Phi Alpha National Service Sorority. Service is such a main cornerstone of who I am as a person. Not only did I create the Service nonprofit organization and be the president of that for the 3 years of my high school, I knew that I needed to have more service in my life when I came to the university. And so being able to engage in service and engage in ways that we can communicate with the community, and also being surrounded by such a group of women that really is there to look out for you and there to empower you and there to make sure that you as a person are just doing well and can exceed, has been one of my greatest things that I've joined. And you know, one of the things that we say a lot in UPUA is it takes a lot of time, and sometimes we joke around, it's like a part-time or a full-time job. But we need to make sure that not only is the executive ticket, but other members are also exploring different parts of the community, because that's the best way that you can advocate for students, is if you engage with students outside of just UPUA. We need to make sure that we're not putting so much responsibility on our members that they can't join other things and they can't focus on academics. And one of the great programs that we have with UPUA is external events, but I would actually like to see external events shaped and re-looked at, because I think that it's a great way that we can make sure that students are going out and finding different organizations and engaging with more students. But it shouldn't just be a form that we fill out, that we go twice a month to different organizations. We should be encouraging them to get excited to go to different things, and what have you learned, and how can we bring your experience, and it shouldn't just be. I think that we should still have the system where we're having accountability for our members to do so, but I think that making it more of something that's encouraged and people are excited to do, rather than just, okay, I have to do my 2 external events for the month, which is a rhetoric that sadly we hear happen a lot of the time. So being involved myself is a big reason of why I love advocating for students and why I love Penn State. And so not only having the executive branch stay involved in any way that you can, but encouraging other members to also stay involved.
Thank you, Erin. So just as a follow-up to that question, about a 1 to 2 minute follow-up, Zach, you can answer this question first. If elected, how much time do you expect UPUA to take up in your life? And do you think that your other extracurricular activities will take time away from your duties as student body president?
I think it'll take a lot of time. Even just serving as chair of Gov, I've always strove to do more than was required of the position. I work to really bring about online advocacy on Twitter to connect with elected officials that way. As I mentioned earlier, I literally wrote Christmas cards to 255 state legislators. They were holiday cards, not Christmas cards, but it included a little photo of the UPUA. It was really sweet, really sweet. But that was like really unnecessary if you think about like the role that was given to me originally. I plan on doing the exact same thing as the president of the UPUA, very much so, finding ways in which the president necessarily hasn't had responsibility in one area before, and taking total and complete ownership of that area, I think has always been something that I would hope I plan to do as president. It's something I do plan to do as president. With regard to extracurricular activities, I do think I'll have to step down from a few. Lion Caucus primarily is going to be something I'm going to have to say goodbye to. As I mentioned, I helped bring it into this world, and now I'm letting it grow, letting it go, and I'm going to stop this analogy. So I'm just going to say that I will not be involved in Lion Caucus moving forward. But I obviously am still involved in ROTC. At this point, it's now all of my math and physics requirements are out of the way. So all that I need to focus on now is keeping up good grades in my other classes, waking up early for PT, and then contributing as much as I can to the student body through the role of president to really get me ready for service as a naval officer following following my graduation too. That's the only thing, and I don't think, as I mentioned, ROTC won't take up too much time as opposed to anything else on campus. But Lion Caucus will be a good fan favorite. I'm also involved in my Thon OBG, or Operation Blue and Gold is what it's called. And so that's kind of like the NROTC's Thon group. I'm not as extensively as involved as I would have liked to have been this past year, but I'll also step down from that this upcoming year.
Thank you, Zach. Erin, if you could answer.
Yeah. So first of all, time management is probably one of the things that I pride myself the most in. I have a Google Calendar. I actually have 2 different Google Calendars for myself, which can sometimes make it a little confusing, but I know how to tackle it. And then I also have a paper planner, two paper planners, a daily one and a monthly one. So time management is definitely something that I pride myself in. Currently, because Thon had ended for the year, I am the homecoming captain, and I am involved currently with my sorority. I do plan to take a step back from my sorority. Sorry if anyone's watching because I didn't tell you this yet. But I do plan to take a leave of absence if I am elected as president. But homecoming is something that I'd still like to be really involved in. Like I said, it's important that we keep a well-rounded experience, and we keep a well-rounded thing. And my position within homecoming as a university relations captain is an extension of what I do with UPUA, and so I don't think that it would be a distraction at all. If anything, it would be an enhancement. But I do expect president to take up most of my time. I am very strict on my academics, so that will be also a focus. But my academics don't typically take up too much. I've spent long nights in the UPA office working on initiatives before. I've tackled a lot of initiatives at one time, and I pride myself in being able to fully give myself to the organization. And that's something that I've told myself that I'm going to do from day one, and that's something that I have done and something that I will do. So UPUA definitely has my #1 priority.
Thank you, Erin. This next question will also be for you as well. This is a question that we asked during the vice presidential debate, and it's been kind of a fan favorite in past years at the debate. So what has been your biggest mistake during your time at Penn State, and how did you recover from it?
How long do we have? So I would say that my biggest mistake is a lot of the times, because you're thrown into a university and you're kind of thrown into a completely different lifestyle, a lot of the times we lose sight of the things that are important to us, and we come up with things like finding as many friends as possible, joining as many organizations as possible, and we can sometimes lose sight of the things that as a person are really important to you. And so I think something that I'm continuing to work on is finding a balance, and I think that I've tried to do that a lot this past year, and I've worked a lot towards that. But making sure that not only am I trying to do my best at school, but also checking back in at home. Family is such a big thing to me, and so making sure that I have those priorities there and keep them in mind, and that's something that it's so easy to lose sight of. And I'll be honest, like any other student that came to the university, sometimes I do lose sight of it, and I think very much about, okay, this is what I have to do today, here's my calendar, this is what I have to do. But we have to take those times out for other people, and we have to take those times out for ourselves as well. You know, personal reflection and personal just mental health is such a big thing that sometimes it's hard to keep track of. And this past year, I've had to really look at my schedule and say, okay, I'm gonna schedule in time to go to the gym. I'm gonna schedule in, here's where I'm gonna call family. Here's where I'm gonna really just take time out for myself. And it's about growing it and learning how to live independently. But one of the biggest things that I took away from UPUA this past year, I worked on an advocacy video, like I mentioned, about affordability with students. And I was sitting down with this one student. She was telling me her story. And she sat down and she said this quote, and it gave me goosebumps. And I continue to think about it all the time. She said, "The biggest room that you can walk into is the room for improvement." And I constantly think about that, because it's about self-evaluating. It's about sitting down and saying, okay, this is what I did today. How can I make it better? And so I think while I'm at a pretty good place right now with self-balance, there's always room to improve. And so I'm excited to see where the rest of my Penn State career takes me.
Thank you, Erin. Zach, if you could answer.
Yeah. So there's three. They're all really short, so I'll try to just get through them. They're all in freshman year, fair and square. So the first one was I decided to follow the advice of my theater advisor my freshman year when I told her that I was interested in taking majoring in international relations or international politics and economics. She said, "Oh, you should take international economics, Econ 333. That sounds like perfect for you." So I took it my freshman year, and that was an experience. But I certainly got to know a few different econ professors that way, and kind of build relationships that I didn't think I would, being the only freshman in a 300 level econ class. We survived. The second would be not bringing up my bike on the first week of campus. As I mentioned, I bike everywhere. You can find me driving or biking, I suppose, everywhere I go. And so I didn't have it on day one, and then I couldn't get it till fall break, which by that point it was really unnecessary because it was just freezing cold the entire time I was riding it later in the fall. But you live and you learn. And then the third, which I think is probably the more, it might be, I suppose, actually one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, but it starts from one of the worst. I didn't come to Penn State as an ROTC midshipman. I didn't come to Penn State for ROTC. I didn't intend to serve in the Navy or anything like that. My father had always told me, growing up, that his greatest regret in life was not serving, and that living, well, he didn't say this, but I think living a life of service is like one of the greatest things that you can do. So I remember coming to Penn State, and I was really engaged in acting, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to Los Angeles, and I'm also a terrible actor. So that I decided to find a different avenue. But it's all about sharing voices and sharing stories and things like that. Regardless, I decided to send an email to one of the lieutenants on like the very first week. I remember I was sitting in the hub and I was on my phone and I saw a midshipman in khakis walking by, and I said, I can do this. Like if they're giving their time and their energy, and in many ways like the next few years of their life to doing this, to something so much bigger than them, I could do it too. And that's exactly what I did. So I sent an email, we set up a time to talk. And what ended up being one of like my biggest regrets in life was not, getting involved earlier, because I couldn't join till that upcoming spring semester. Ended up being one of the greatest decisions in my life, was ending up joining in ROTC.
Thank you, Zach. So since we're kind of wrapping up the debate, I'm going to end this debate with a few more lighthearted questions, just to kind of get a sense of how you feel on certain issues that, the Penn State community might think very important, since they did submit them in the question form. So the first question will be for Zach. What is your favorite building on Penn State's campus, and why?
That's a really interesting one. There's a lot. Well, maybe it's cliche, but I really do like Old Main. There's one room in there, it's called the Alumni Room, on the first floor, and it's really cool. I've said his name twice now, I think. One of my favorite presidents is Abraham Lincoln. There's a nice little bust of Abraham Lincoln in there, considering that he was the one that signed the bill, which more or less created Penn State. And it's kind of cool in there. Sometimes, I don't know, don't tell anyone. Sometimes I'll go in and like read and study in there. It's always quiet, and so I really like spending time there. But I also I took this theater. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say this. Okay, nursing majors, close your ears. There's a really cool program at Penn State where you can take a theater program to basically serve as a nursing patient for nursing seniors who are about to go into the field. And so I took that this past year, and I was able to spend a lot of time in the nursing building. And so I remember just kind of like looking at some of the architecture of it with the glass in the front, and then it's pretty close in proximity to Hub, and it's at the Hub, and then it's pretty close in proximity to Panda Express, and so the nursing building is another good one. That's Old Main and the nursing building.
Thank you, Zach. Erin, if you could answer.
Yeah, that's another hard one. I find myself, I don't like to study in my room, so I like to bounce around. I actually go downtown a lot to Saints Cafe. It's probably one of my favorite places. But on campus, again, this is going to sound cliche, but the Hub definitely is one of my favorite places on campus. If I'm not in class and if I'm not downtown at Saints Cafe, you can find me in the Hub. And I think that it's such a great place because you see students interacting with each other. You see the community really coming together, whether it's a fall day where people are out tossing a Frisbee and playing volleyball and taking a break, or you go inside to one of the libraries and you see students hard at work working together, or you see the great tabling events that organizations put on, and you see people reach over from the tables and start talking to each other when there's a lull in people walking by, and you say, oh, what are you doing? And you really hear about their day, and you can really create those personal connections. Or even my favorite part is when there's prospective student tours, and you see, okay, this could be the new class of Penn State, and could be who I work alongside with. And even alumni. My parents are both proud Penn State alumni, and I remember the first time that my dad walked into the Hub, he was like, this is not the Hub that I went to when I was at Penn State. And he was just in awe of how much students were sitting with each other and interacting with each other, and how we have such great amenities on campus to facilitate that. And so it's a cool central place on campus where you can see people from prospective students to current students to alumni come back, and they either have a story or they have a personal connection to it. And so it's got to be one of my favorite places.
Thank you. This next question is for Erin. Just very brief. What is your favorite Penn State Creamery ice cream flavor?
Oh, that's so hard. I would have to say Death by Chocolate. I'm a big chocolate fan.
Zach?
Peachy Paterno. I don't know, I like it. I wish it didn't come in styrofoam, but Peachy Paterno.
Thank you. So this will be the final question before conclusions. Again, this is a question that was asked during vice presidential debate. Always a very important question to Penn Staters. Sheets or Wawa? And Zach, I'll let you answer first.
Okay. I live in Pittsburgh, the South Hills of Pittsburgh, so I've only grown up with Sheets. But don't be fooled. I actually like Wawa better than I do Sheets. Don't tell anybody here in Pittsburgh, but I wish there was a Wawa in State College. And I know that our campaign kind of like joked around a little bit on April Fool's Day with a policy update to bring a Wawa to State College. Who's to say? No, I think at the end of the day, Wawa takes the cake for me.
Erin?
Wawa. It's got to be Wawa. Nothing beats a Wawa soft pretzel. When I used to come back and fill my car up, I'd go to the gas station, get a pretzel, and be on my way. And nothing's better than a Wawa trip.
Thank you both for those very difficult selections of the Sheets versus Wawa debate. So we are going to start wrapping up the debate. So you will each have 3 minutes for conclusions. Erin, if you want to go first.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, Rachel and Zach, for being here, and everybody else who's here currently, and anybody who's going to watch. You know, everybody's going through so much right now, and we've talked about this a lot, but it's so cool to see people still so engaged and still so wanting to be within the Penn State community, and engaging in these types of things is one of the greatest ways that you can. And so I'm loving interacting with you guys personally and through social media and phone calls, and it's the highlight of my day, especially in a time like this. And so I'm really happy to share part of my platform with you, and I'm not going to sit here and throw at you adjectives or flashy statements. I know who I am. I know I have honesty. I know I have integrity through everything that I do. I know I'm trustworthy, and I know I have experience. I can say the same thing for Kyle, and I can say the same thing for my campaign. A big thing is advocacy is not just words. Advocacy is action. And so I've shown throughout my time, not only throughout this campaign, but on this campus, that I have the qualifications and I have the character to be able to do this role. And so I'm really excited to continue to share that with you and continue to show you and not just tell you. And you know, we've brought out a lot of different initiatives on the platform. We have so many, and they're linked to sustainability because we want to make sure that everything that we do is sustainable, and it's going to be something that can really make an impact. But you know, the 17th sustainable goal from the United Nations is partnerships for the goals. So we can't do this without you. And that's a big thing. A vote for Boas Larson isn't a vote for Erin and Kyle. It's a vote for you. It's a vote so you can empower your future, put strength and unity for your community, open the gates for your success, for your future. I hope that you can find something on the platform and throughout everything that we put together that you can relate to and resonate with. And I am so excited to continue talking with you all. And I really hope that you do vote Boas Larson on April 15th, because that is a vote for you. And I'm so excited to continue talking with you all and what the future can look like when you empower state's future.
Thank you. Zach, if you could answer.
Yeah, of course. Very similarly, Rachel, thank you so much for hosting tonight. I understand that some others weren't able to make it, so thank you for kind of stepping up to the plate and helping moderate tonight. I know how difficult that can be as a moderator myself. Erin, thank you again for the wonderful conversation tonight. I think we really did highlight a lot of the problems which Penn State faces, and we definitely talked about some of the best ways to really tackle them head on. I have to say that I am so incredibly thankful to have had this opportunity to share those ideas and messages with all of you listening today or tonight or tomorrow too. We are in a very unprecedented time, and I have to say that I really do wish that we were in person together. But I am just so happy to see that each of us are taking the commitment to keep our communities as safe as possible, and those that are vulnerable to the pandemic as safe as possible as well. Lexi and I are honored to be running in this election for you and for all of our shared future, one which embodies all of the ideals which Lexi and I have strove to embody in our leadership styles, in which we ensure and plan to ensure that your student government embodies as well. Honesty, leadership, integrity, experience, sustainability, but not just linking sustainability to initiatives, but rather finding a way in which our initiatives cannot be unsustainable, finding ways in which we can ensure that everything that our organization does is for the betterment for you, so that it can serve you and represent you as best as possible. There is absolutely no question that my experience in UPUA, as well as across campus, makes me the most qualified for this role. But at the end of the day, it's not about me. It is so much more about you. It is about the students who we have been collaborating with since day one to create a platform which truly represents the concerns most pertinent to you as the students, and ultimately to all of us, because we're all students on this university's campus. We need to take the time and address the issues which are being raised to us, whether it be by the Department of Education or by the Sustainability Institute's already existing sustainability reports. We need to find ways which truly exemplifies the leadership which this organization needs to be embodying moving forward. And Lexi and I can't tell you how much we would appreciate your support in helping us do so on April 15th. Again, you can vote at vote.psu.edu, and I really do hope you consider voting for not just Lexi and I. Very similarly, it's not about us. It is so much more about creating, like the 16th Sustainable Development Goal says, strong institutions which can serve you as best as possible. Without doing so, there's no way that we can continue as an effective advocacy organization or student government. I know that this time, especially while social distancing for a month, may seem incredibly lonely. You may think that no one is there for you, nobody is there to hear you or to listen to the rants you have about the problems you're facing at home or with your family, but know that I am here to remind you that Lexi and I are here as your voice, that we are here to listen to you and your concerns. We will always be here to listen to you and your concerns. And as long as we have a platform to speak, we will never stop listening to you, your needs, and advocating for what you need as a student. I firmly believe that if you review our platform of ideas and see just how these ideas were created and who was consulted on them throughout the entire process, there's no doubt in your mind either that we are keeping your top concerns our top priority during this time of crisis. I can't speak for anybody else but myself and maybe Lexi, but my top priority is serving you, the students, and that will never change. Please reach out if there's anything that I can do to help during this time. Thank you again so much for taking the time to listen today. And I'd be more than happy to answer any other questions if you'd like to reach out on an individual basis. Keep an eye out for some more coffee chats too, just to kind of just talk about all that's going on in our lives, uncampaign related, not campaign related, just to get to talk to each other. That's what counts. All right, thank you so much.
Zach and Erin, thank you so much for being here, for adapting to this very interesting Zoom format for the debate. As much as I do wish that we could have had this debate in person, I just want to thank you both so much for showing up and just sharing your ideas and your platform with everybody. So thank you again, and I hope you have a great rest of your night.
Thank you so much.